welcome everyone. We're delighted you can join us today for our webinar focused on supporting reading through audiobooks. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. As you'll likely be aware, National Literacy Trust recently published research which highlights the opportunity audiobooks present to engage children and young people in reading. In my experience as a school librarian, I found audiobooks a brilliant way to encourage even the most reluctant readers, but also to offer group reading opportunities and shared reading and story experiences that might not otherwise happen. We're going to be exploring this today. So our programme today, we've got quite a busy schedule. We have two brilliant people from the National Literacy Trust team joining us, Irene, Senior Research Manager, and Lucy, Senior Programme Manager, both of whom will be sharing the perspective from the research, but also how audiobooks are used in and through the NLT programmes. And then we have one of our really valued members, a school librarian from Neston High School in Cheshire, who will be sharing how audio is used in her school to support readers. And then we'll be hearing from different audio tech providers. Unfortunately, Marisa from the co-founder from the audio agency can't be online today, but she is here in spirit, and we'll be sharing thoughts and stories from the audio agency at a later date. And then finally, we will hopefully have time for a Q&A where we can respond to all of your questions in the chat. So do use the chat to ask questions, and I will field them for the panel at the end. I will hand over to our first speaker, Irene Picton, Senior Research Manager at National Literacy Trust.
Thanks very much, Tori. Thank you. Yes, so I'm Irene. I'm Senior Research Manager at the National Literacy Trust. But just a bit of brief background. I started my career as a bookshop manager, career in this area. And then I moved into our Young Readers programme at the NLT about 20 years ago. And then a decade ago, I moved across to our research team, where a lot of my work relates either to reading for pleasure or interactions between literacy and technology. Those are my sort of twin fascinations. And I'm sure Lucy will introduce herself a bit when she gets to her section too. Great. So Tori very kindly invited us along to share a bit about the recent research on children and young people's listening in 2024, along with some of our practical recommendations and experience around using audio in the school library setting. So over the next kind of 10 minutes, I'm going to share some of the headlines and the key findings from our latest report looking at engagement with audio formats, including how that differs by age, gender and socioeconomic background, and a little bit about what we know in terms of trends over time. So to get straight on with it, what do we know about children and young people's enjoyment of audio formats? The data I'm going to share comes from our annual literacy survey, or ALS. I'm hoping that some of the people who are watching this webinar might be familiar with this, but if not, as you can see on the slide, we've been conducting this survey since 2005, but annually, it became the annual literacy survey in 2010. So we're in our 15th year. And the main purpose of the annual literacy survey was and is to include children's voices in research and debates in this area, and to help inform school practice and our own programmes and policy. So the questionnaire that we give to children and young people includes core questions on reading, writing, speaking and listening, and always additional questions on some topical themes. So AI would be a recent example. And in 2024, which is where this report is from, because we've only just finished 2025, but in 2024, we reached more than 76,000 children and young people aged 5 to 18 at more than 400 schools across the UK. So it's a really decent sample size. We've just closed our 2025 survey. As I say, this reached more than 100,000 children and young people. So yeah, it's quite a solid group who take part every year. And very briefly, I just wanted to set the scene for our audio findings with just some very brief bullets about our report on reading trends in 2024, which preceded the audio report. So in a nutshell, we had the lowest percentage of children reporting enjoying reading in their free time since we started asking about this in 2005. And there was a really considerable drop between 2023 and 2024. So just 1 in 3 children told us that they enjoyed reading in their free time last year. And similarly, we saw the lowest percentage of children reporting reading daily, just 1 in 5 said that, and a widening gender gap. So that's the sort of the context, if you like, and that did generate, and it continues to generate, headlines across traditional and social media and the trade and sector press, sort of sparking an ongoing national conversation, which is great, because we want everybody, policymakers, publishers, to really get engaged with this. And our audio research did do the same thing, perhaps a little bit more polarized, as these things can be, and hopefully I'll get onto that in a second. But in the meantime, what did it say? So while, as I say, reading enjoyment has plummeted effectively in recent years, and you can see that on the left of the slide here, we can see that listening enjoyment has remained a bit more steady. So the percentage of children and young people who tell us they enjoyed reading their free time, we can see has decreased quite dramatically over just the last few years. We had about half of children saying they enjoyed reading back in 2021. This had dropped to 1 in 3 by 2024. We have only been collecting data on listening since 2021, listening enjoyment. But as you can see, the percentage who say they enjoy listening has remained pretty steady over that time. It's about 2 in 5 in an average year, children, young people who tell us they enjoy listening in their free time. And that might not seem as interesting, I suppose, as the plummeting reading stats. I think in one way, one perspective would be to say that listening perhaps seems more resilient than reading for enjoyment there. But one thing that we always do is we compare overall levels of enjoyment of reading, writing and listening with each other every year. And on this slide, you can see that another way of putting our findings last year was that a higher percentage of children told us they enjoyed listening than enjoyed either reading or writing in their free time. And that's actually the first time that that's happened since we asked about listening enjoyment. So that is quite an interesting finding, again, depending on your perspective, whether you see it as just being more resilient or, more children enjoying listening. I think as a research team, our first instinct was to see it more about how do we address this dramatic drop in reading enjoyment, because listening seems to be pretty steady. But yes, others have had other thoughts and ideas on this, which we might come on to. But just to focus only on audio, because that's what this webinar is about. As in previous years, in 2024, we can see slightly more boys than girls told us they enjoyed listening to audio. And I say slightly because it is really just a few percentage points. It's sort of no headline, if you like, but still, that is unusual. It's the other way around usually. And then also you can see that children aged 8 to 11 have got the highest levels of listening enjoyment, almost 1 in 2 told us they enjoyed listening to audio. And you can see it's more like 2 in 5 for the other age groups. And then in a reversal of our previous year's patterns, we can see very slightly more children who receive free school meals. That's what FSM means, sorry. On the slide said they enjoyed listening to audio compared with those who did not. But again, it's just a few percentage points. As a note, and this isn't on the slide, but we do also ask about enjoyment of listening in school. And while it's lower overall, this is listening in free time, as you can see from the title. We ask about enjoyment of listening in school. It's lower overall. I think it's about 1 in 3 or maybe close to 3 in 10, I think, who say they enjoy doing that. The percentage of children who receive FSMs is quite a bit higher who enjoy listening in school. I think it was 32% versus 26.7% when it comes to listening in school. So that's just possibly worth being aware of. It's very hard for us to tell why from these like top line stats, but that's a trend that we'll be keeping an eye on in future years. And then, yes, speaking of gaps, as I mentioned, slightly more boys than girls report enjoying listening in their free time. And you can see on this slide, the percentage of boys versus girls who report enjoying reading, writing and listening going from left to right is quite different. So in the green area that we've got 28% of boys enjoyed reading. This compares to 40% of girls who enjoy reading, gap of about 12 percentage points. There's a similar percentage points gap for writing, as you can see. There's about 22% of boys and nearly 35% of girls report enjoying this. And that gender gap is just much, much smaller when it comes to enjoyment of audio, listening formats, it's just 3 percentage points, and reversed as well. So again, depending on your perspective, you can see that the gap narrows when it comes to audio. You might say that boys and girls are relatively equally likely to enjoy this format. So very quickly, just a couple of slides left. What are some of the reasons why children and young people tell us that they might choose to listen to an audiobook or a podcast in their free time? What are their motivations? So I've shared some of the statements that we asked children to agree or disagree with in this last survey. And as you can see, quite a lot, more than half, tell us that listening helps them to relax or release feelings of stress and anxiety. So a real kind of mental well-being connection there. We also have lots of young people tell us they listen to learn, which is great. You know, about half felt listening helped them to understand a story or a subject. We have links to speaking and listening here. So about 2 in 5 children said listening had made them want to talk more about something with family or friends, which is great. And then finally, almost 2 in 5 made a link between listening and their wider reading. 37% said that something they'd listened to had made them more interested in reading. And it's that last one that we really wanted to emphasize in our research, because, you know, this aspect of listening as a route into reading, we are of course interested in supporting children, young people's listening in its own rights. You know, it's innately valuable if it's something they enjoy, but we're also very conscious of this rapid decline in the percentage of children who say they enjoy reading for pleasure. So wherever we see a potential route into reading, we're going to focus on that. So yeah, that connection is really important. It's why we've emphasised the value of better supporting listening in the curriculum when we've responded to the curriculum assessment review. And that, on a practical level, we say might involve increasing access to audio and digital formats to ensure there's that broad range of routes into reading, however children prefer to engage with stories and information. And I mean, the value of listening has already been recognised in the reading framework. So we should be pushing at an open door, as they say. And at the same time, debates around audio, I'm sure we're all very conscious of these, whether it's proper literacy or not, you know, continue to rage. Is it as good as reading? How is it different, and so on? What I will say more positively, though, is we just really love seeing the range of responses that our research gets. This is some examples here. We even got the front page of the Times of this audio research. We couldn't believe it. But what's great about it is even people's comments give us ideas for our next research project. And we're working on that as we speak. So I would love for anybody watching this webinar to let us know if there's anything in this area you'd like to hear more about. And with that, I'm going to hand you over to Lucy.
My name is Lucy Starbuck Braidley, and I'm a senior programme manager at, I'm just going to reverse my ties, at the National Literacy Trust, where I run the Libraries for Primaries programmes. And since the start of Libraries for Primaries, we've always included an audiobook player and an audiobook collection that we gift to schools who are participating in the programme. So as part of that, we wanted to explore how we could really support schools more to use their audiobook provision in a more targeted way with children. So we developed an audiobook club pilot, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the approach that we tested out in some schools in Wales. So we worked with 3 primary schools in Wales as a really small scale pilot, and we asked them to target children not actively engaged in reading for pleasure. So children who maybe didn't see themselves as readers in their spare time. All the schools already had a Yoto player, a device for playing audiobooks on, that they were given through the programme. And then on top of that, we provided them with a Yoto card with the story Planet Omar, Accidental Trouble Magnet on. Also 10 copies of the hard copies of the book, 1 for each child, and then some extras for their library. And we also provided them with 3 copies of the next book in the series as well. So with the idea that if we inspired readers with this book, they could also access some other ones from the series as well. And we gave them some resources for activities, including a notebook for each child and special pens, always very important, the special pens, and also planning for 8 sessions. So these were to be delivered twice a week for 40 minutes, and that's quite a lot. But what we really wanted to do was see what an intense burst of activity around audiobooks could whether or not that would increase engagement in reading. And so this was the structure of the session. There was sharing a key question at the start, and then there was a period of active listening. And the idea idea was that you do this short burst of active listening where there's a key thing that children are listening out for, but you tell them in advance that that's what they're going to listen for. So it's not a kind of listen and then get a surprise question at the end. You have the question first. And then a time for discussion in each session, and followed by an engaging task. And the task, I'm going to break down an example session for you to give you a bit more detail. But the task was really designed to be fun, something that could create positive experiences around reading, because we're really just trying to shift those mindsets a little bit where maybe children didn't see themselves as readers or as reading as something they wanted to do. And we gave some recommendations to the schools that adults listen to the whole story beforehand, and that children can access that copy of their book outside of the club. So it was theirs to take home and have ownership of, because book ownership is, we know that's so important. So here's an example of the first session of the Planet Omar audiobook club. So the key question that we started with was, what did you discover about Omar and his family in the introduction? So nice, simple one. The children we encouraged teachers to create a relaxed environment. Children can lie down on the floor, have their notebooks, doodle. And I'm saying teachers because in these three schools, it was teachers that were running the club. They weren't lucky enough to have librarians within their settings, so it was teachers that were running the club for the children. And then they did the active listening where they listened to the first 2 chapters of the book, and they were encouraged to draw, doodle, do whatever they wanted in their notebooks, but thinking about that key question. Then they had a discussion, not just about the book itself, but about, did any of the characters remind them children of their own family? Could they make links from the text to the world around them and the world that they knew? And just to spark a conversation and personal connections with the title. And then there was an engaging task, and in this first one, the task was to draw their own family. So the book is highly illustrated, so the children had access to that at the same time as listening, so they could see the pictures and hear the book at the same time. And they could see the illustrations of the family. There's some examples on the cover there. And they were encouraged to create images of their own family or friendship group. And we always give guidelines to the teachers who are leading the group to really make it personalised. So we know they obviously know about the family circumstances of the children. If drawing a family is not an appropriate thing, go for friendship group instead. But it's all about them making connections between the text and their life and seeing that that's what you do when you read, and that's why people enjoy engaging with books. So other examples of some of the kind of tasks that we had at the end, there was a task. So Omar's mum is a scientist, and they do like a science club at home, and they had a kit to reenact some of the science experiments they did. Creating a little whirlpool in a bottle was one of the activities. Omar's family are also a Muslim family, and at iftar they were sharing dates. There was also a date tasting activity where they could try a date if they hadn't had one, or if they had one, they could just eat one and talk about times that they've eaten dates. Again, linking the book to their personal experiences. There was a task where they could watch a video of the author talking about why she wrote the book and what motivated her as an author, and also a chance to create an audiobook of their own at the end, because the Yoto cards also have a recordable blank card, so they could create their own audiobook of one of the sequels of the book or of their own writing as well. So lots of different things, really aiming to try and encourage engagement with the text. We also placed a real special emphasis on vocabulary. I think one of the real benefits of audiobooks is when you come across new vocabulary in an audiobook, you instantly know how to pronounce that word, which for me personally, there's been many occasions when I've learned a new word and I then avoided using it in my own vocabulary because I didn't know if I was saying it correctly. So that's one of the benefits of audiobooks. Straight away, you've got that pronunciation there. So we highlighted some words that could be new to the children, but also encouraged adults leading the group to listen and consider the specific group that they were working with. For example, this story focused on a Muslim family. If you're a Muslim, that's lots of the vocabulary in that book are not going to be new or interesting. It's going to be daily words for you. However, if you weren't, then that could be. So really thinking about the group that you were working with and identifying vocabulary beforehand that they might not know, but also encouraging the children to be active participants in that, make little notes as they were listening alongside. And some teachers were sceptical at the start. They thought that the drawing and the note-taking would perhaps lead to children being distracted and not really listening. But actually they found that when they ran the tasks and asked the questions and had the discussions, the children had been listening and they were just doing as we all do, I do, doodle whilst I'm listening in meetings. And that was actually a way of keeping them engaged rather than distracting them. So here's some of the other feedback that we received. So the pupils were really delighted and excited to be selected for the group. It felt special and there was a bit of a buzz around it at school, which was great. They were really proud to have a copy of their book to take home, and that book ownership really boosted their kind of sense of being readers themselves. Teachers reported that they would not normally give the children that they had selected a book that was this long or complex to read. And so the children had access to something much more complicated, and it really stretched them, but it was accessible. And they also, and I love this because one of the key features of a reading community is social interactions around books. And so often, if you are unable to decode the same books as your peers and access them through reading itself, then you can be excluded from those social interactions. So here the teachers observed that pupils were chatting with each other about what would happen next and having spontaneous social interactions around the book outside of the club, just in the playground and down the corridors of school, which is brilliant to hear. The practical elements the teachers felt really worked, especially I like this listening with biscuits, which is also my other favourite way to listen, was really popular. And it also created a buzz around the school with the staff as well. So teachers, having heard about the project, became more interested in using audiobook players in their class and wanted to have access to the resource as a shared resource in the school, which was great. And one of the benefits of the Yoto player that you could pass it around. Teachers also improved a general improvement in the children's engagement level and enthusiasm for reading as an activity. There was one piece of kind of improvement that we could have done, which was that one setting found it quite difficult to fit those. We deliberately kind of tried to overload the week with these 2 40-minute sessions to see what the impact would be. But for one school, that was just too much. They couldn't fit it into their schedule, and they had preferred shorter sessions of around 20 minutes. I think you could do that with just the listening and discussion task. It'd probably be a bit tricky to fit that in with the kind of fun activity on the end as well. I really like this quote. So another thing that we really made sure within the plan was that there was time to complete the whole audiobook within the sessions. So when they were doing their fun task at the end, another couple of chapters of the audiobook was played just for listening whilst they were doing the activity. And that meant that they could listen to the whole story and really get that sense of completion and satisfaction of listening to the whole story and being really engaged in that story world. So that is the end of my slides, and we'll be back for questions and answers at the end, but thanks everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you both. Thanks, Irene and Lucy. Just fascinating research and really good to hear what's going on, and very interesting, as you said, to spot what's happening in the media and the media response to some of those conversations, but maybe we'll get the opportunity to talk more about that later. I am very, very pleased to welcome one of our SLA members, Claire Roberts from Neston High School in Cheshire, to talk about how her school and she is using audio in her setting. So over to you, Claire.
Oh, thank you very much. We started using Overdrive or Sora last September. As you can see from the picture on my first slide, that is my entire library. It's absolutely tiny, and we're a school of 2,000 students. So the quantity of books we could fit on the shelves, it just wasn't working, even with vast amounts of weeding, and the students just wanted more. We had a lot of long-term overdue books, and those students being sort of cajoled to bring them back. It was massive use of time, and the books weren't coming back, so they were sort of blocked from the library. The kids were asking for audio books, as we've seen from the NLT data. It was already popular, and I could see a lot of my students were spending quite a lot of money on Audible or Spotify to listen to books. And we also, as a school, have an emphasis on anxiety, well-being, mindfulness. So it all sort of tied in and drew us towards Sora, mostly for the audiobooks, but obviously we also get the ebooks as well. So we started in September. It's been a huge success, particularly for the audio, beyond what I ever envisaging. It's amazing, but obviously that also, as a librarian, comes with huge challenges. Finding the balance. The students from year 7 to 9 will come in and they'll say, oh, but miss, can I listen to my audiobook? Which is great, and we're really pleased that they're doing that, but also finding that balance between audiobook, ebook, physical book has been the biggest problem. We've had quite a drop off in the physical loan of books since we introduced audiobooks and ebooks, and that's something that we're still trying to address, because to keep that balance. But you know, as the ladies were saying before, this decline in reading enjoyment, it's everywhere. So for me as a librarian, it was like, what can I do to keep these students reading or listening or just engaging with the stories? It was just a question of throwing everything at it and see what was going to work. And what we've also found with the audiobooks, I think, as Lucy was just saying, that we have a lot of students with quite low reading ages, so they've been able to access any audiobook, and it's been great for them, and I can see their confidence has shot up because suddenly they're talking about the same books as their friends who may have read it or may have also done the audiobook, and that's been really heartwarming to see. Can we have the next slide, please? I'm going to talk for very long. So we can track their use, split between audiobooks and ebooks, because I was quite interested to see what was happening. So in terms of items opened, you can see that ebooks are massively leading the way with the Sora that we use. But the actual hours spent reading, which includes listening, the audiobooks are more or less holding their own there. So to me, I can see as we go around the class that they are opening ebooks and then closing them very quickly, or they're just doing it for the time that they're in there, that they're allowed to use their devices. But it's the audiobooks that they're sticking with, which is really good to see. A lot of the students will start something in class and then they'll come back and they'll say, oh, my mum listened, we put it on in the car, I listened to it while I was dog walking. It's become much more part of their day than possibly picking up a book was. Maybe it's because they've always got their phones and their AirPods with them, so it's just easier to do, which is lovely to see. So we track everybody from year 7 to 9. After that, we let them do what they need to do. The Sora app does let the students set reading goals, which includes listening. So everybody's done that, and I can see who is actually doing it daily, and they get rewards for that, which is lovely. Our latest initiative to get it more popular was Audiobook Club, which started yesterday at the library at break time. I wasn't convinced it was going to work, but I promoted it, brought big sheets of doodling paper into the library, and I think I had about 30 students turn up, all with their headphones, all with their devices, and all they wanted to do was sit in the library in peace and quiet and listen. It was absolutely the most amazing thing I have ever seen. One of the teachers compared it to a silent disco, but for reading. It was lovely. There was students just laughing at all random times, depending on what they were reading. You know, we had a few tears and tissues were handed out. But it was so nice to see them. They just took a break away from the crazy corridors of Neston, came into the library and just popped their earphones in and listened to their book. And it was a real validation, to be honest, that we had done the right thing in getting this system set up for the students. I was just absolutely beaming. It was wonderful. So that's made me really happy. So the engagement is definitely high. Still trying to get the year 9s and above into it, but we're getting there slowly. It more of a case of them knowing about it and practicing using it. But the 7s to 9s absolutely love their audiobooks, and now it is just a question of trying to find that balance. One of the other challenges, of course, is we are a no phone school, but to use this is requiring them to have their phones. So we've got an exemption in the library for audiobooks and occasionally for use of ebooks in the library. And I just say 1, 2, 3, show me, and they all have to hold up their phones. And if they're doing something else, if they're on TikTok, then they're in trouble. But generally, they're not. So from that point of view, that was the one thing I was worried about. It is working out all right. Okay, and just my last slide, please, Helen. So how do we use audiobooks in Neston? Absolutely everywhere that we can fit them in. The English teachers have used them for class reads. The form tutors have used them. We have reading time in forms with different books, and as we know, not every teacher is confident or willing to read aloud. You know, maths teachers, they're just too grumpy sometimes. So I found them the audiobooks, and they are very happy to play a chapter once a week, twice a week, however it is. We used one on World Book Day, which was wonderful. They had a chapter and we passed it around the different members of staff. Our VI students, they think it's great. Obviously, for the ebook side of it, they can read the same books as their peers, and they can listen to the same books. That's been a real joy to see. One of my top 5 users is a VI student who I never really realised was a reader, and it was heartbreaking, but yeah, utterly delightful to see that she is now listening to audiobook and able to use the ebooks that come with the same package. It's amazing. Mindfulness time, as I've said before, our new audiobook club has been a huge success. EAL students, brilliant. They've managed to listen in, improve their English, improve new words, hear the pronunciation. I've guided them with a few books. Dyslexic students, again, struggling readers. You know, we've had all this from the NLT ladies, and then different learning styles as well have really, really, really appreciated it. I found some of our more bouncy boys have really enjoyed it. I think it's not quite a shutting down of other senses, but they calm. They just become so much calmer when they're listening, and that is great, especially in a library, which is very small. So it's lovely. So yeah, I'm absolutely delighted with how it's worked out at our school. You can see from the picture, we're using it for our shadowing group at the moment. There's 3 available on audiobook. The first 2 I've listened to, and I particularly like them because they are done with accents. So Little Bang, for example, is set in Northern Ireland, and then Northern Irish people doing the talking. So to me, that's added an awful lot to the story. Okay, that's all from me. I hope there's some questions in a little bit, but yeah, we love it. So from a librarian's point of view, hugely recommended. Thank you,
Claire. Honestly, that's so inspiring. The work you're doing is so good, and I also think it's really brave as well to introduce something new, but so solution focused. You're looking at.
I just think with reading enjoyment dwindling, and you know, we're librarians, we've got to be doing something about it. So to me, we just throw everything at it and see what sticks, and this is definitely sticky.
Yeah. It's brilliant, and obviously not without challenge, but you know, having the approach set up and looking at the different groups and using it in different ways, I think is really, really powerful. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming and being here after a busy day at school. We are now going to move on to looking at audio provision. I can see there's questions in the chat, so we'll do our best to come to those at the end. But I'm really pleased to welcome Paul from Overdrive to talk about Sora, which is the app. So Paul, thank you so much for being here and joining us. Over to you.
So thanks, Victoria. Well, obviously, I work for Overdrive, but and our service provision for schools is the Sora app, which I don't know if I can add anything more than what Claire Roberts has already said, because she's done an absolutely wonderful job with the service at Neston High. So. But I'll just sort of fill in the gaps for people who are who want to know a little bit more about how you can bring in audiobooks to your school using our service, and I'm going to share my screen now. So Overdrive has a digital library platform, an app for schools called Sora, as you've already heard, and just briefly. It is available in the browser, but it's also available on devices. Crucially, it is available as an app to download for any Android or Apple phone or tablet, so that students can listen to audiobooks on the go as part of their commute or in downtime, in mindfulness time, or in any other opportunities that they get. It is designed for ebook, audiobook reading and listening. As Claire has already made the point, you can adjust all the reading and listening settings. The other issue here is that you can also listen to your audiobooks offline. So if a student borrows an audiobook from the collection, it will download a file version to their device. So even if the student is living in circumstances where they don't have ready access to the internet, they can actually go to school, use the school's own Wi-Fi, borrow the audiobook, the file will download to their device, and then they can go home with that audiobook and listen to it, even if they don't have access or have poor access to internet wherever they are. It will also define words for them for their ebooks, bookmarks, highlights, notes. Obviously, they can use it for study, use it for book clubs. They can reserve titles as well as borrow. And students, as Claire has already pointed out, students have access to their reading stats. They can see exactly how many audiobooks they have been listening to and how often they listen to books. And for those students that have a kind of competitive bent and like to see things organized in terms of numbers and how many they have done and how many they need to do, then the stats part of Sora is for them. Now, audiobooks themselves, it's a very easy player to use, and it means also that if you have Sora on a device and that device has speakers or strong enough audio playback, then you can of course use any device to play audiobooks in the classroom. It's an easy service as well to use for students. You won't need to run lots of presentation seminars or training with students in terms of how to actually use and borrow an audiobook. This will be one of the easiest apps that they've used, and they'll quickly get to understand it. They can jump 15 seconds forwards or back, adjust their playback speed, so they can slow down the playback for those students who need to concentrate, also for EAL students as well who need to focus on their English. There is also a timer as well. As everybody knows, audiobooks, especially as you head up to year 7 and beyond, these can run into 3 hours, 4 hours and more. If you're listening to an audiobook in bed, you can set the timer so that it automatically switches itself off after a certain period of time. Easy for students to borrow and listen to audiobooks, and easy for staff to play audiobooks in the classroom setting. How to get audiobooks into the school? There are 3 ways. As with Neston High, they use secondary ebooks now, which is a subscription collection that we manage, which contains about I think it's nearly 700 audio titles in the collection. This includes British audio publishing as well, which is an important thing to look out for. it's got audio for everyone, every age group, and every interest in there. The equivalent package is available for primary ebooks now as well. A huge collection of audio. Whereas before, if we were having this presentation about, maybe 5 years ago, the percentage of audio in any kind of given collection would have been much smaller. But obviously now audio is a huge division of any publishing house, and so audio editions are usually available not long after the ebook is available as well. So consequently, our collections as well have very large audio format collections to them. You can therefore have primary ebooks now, secondary ebooks now as a subscription you can add, or else you can also build your own audiobook collection for your school. You buy and purchase your own audiobooks, and you build exactly the collection you want. Now, that could be just a collection for staff to have access to. Equally, if you're working in a trust, a multi-academy trust, or equivalent school group, you can also build an audio resource that can sit at the heart of your multi-academy trust as well, for which either initially it's there for all staff to access and utilize in their lessons, and for the library to use, or else you can make it available for students. And you can start by, first of all, making it a staff collection, and then move on to then making it available for students. A quick word about, as you get into the world of audiobooks, and this is an area where we can provide training through School Library Association as well if needs be, but there is a lot more flexibility now in purchasing audiobooks. So you can buy them, one copy, one user, but there are also class sets now available for audio in digital. There are subscription packages of audio available, and there are now many audio titles that are available in simultaneous access up to 100 users and beyond. It means that you can use audio flexibly. You can use it for book clubs, you can use it for class reading, or reading challenges. So this is an area that requires a whole separate seminar one day, but it's just to make the point that that as time has gone on, there's been much more progress from publishers in making audio in a more flexible licensing models for school libraries and for use in schools. And if anybody would like to find out more, they can contact me, and I can give them as much time as they want on audiobook licensing models. So,
Thanks, Paul. That sounds very exciting. No, that's amazing and brilliant to hear more about Sora and what's available. I am going to swiftly move on. I also want to make sure we have time to speak to Rebecca Lundgren, who is from Voxblock, about the brilliant device that you have created, which is just amazing. So please, over to you, Rebecca. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. I'll try to keep it brief. So yes, my name is Rebecca. I am co-founder of Voxblock, a screen-free audiobook player. So very briefly, to give you the story behind, this started a few years ago now. I found my old cassette tapes. I'm sure you all remember them, hopefully. I was a big fan. I gave it to my daughter. I was 3 at the time, and she absolutely loved it. And I thought, oh yeah, this is such a great entertainment and literacy tool that does not involve a screen. I did not want to give her a phone at the age of 3. But they're not made anymore. So I had a look around for alternatives. And although there are many alternatives out there, none of them really ticked all of my boxes. So I decided to do it myself, have a go. And here we are, Voxblock. You can see it here as well. Little books like this, the size of a cassette tape. We launched 3 years ago, and we're selling all over UK and in Australia and New Zealand. from last year as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about how it works in schools and how you can use it. When we launched, actually, we only addressed B2C, families and children, and it was teachers coming to us to say, hey, this is great. I could really see this in my classroom or school library. So we decided to set up some school-specific products. The biggest feedback that we get, positive feedback, is that it's low effort and time saving. So this player is, it requires no Wi-Fi or login or setup. The audio is actually physically on the block, and so you pop it in and play, which means that teachers and librarians do not have to help the children get it set up. The children have their own autonomy, which they really, really enjoy. There's also no GDPR issues or approval from the IT department. It's pretty straightforward. You take it out of the box and start listening. Secondly, it supports literacy, and we've seen that. I'm not going to develop that point too much. We've heard the previous speakers talk about it, and it's the same for Voxblock, the benefits of listening to audiobooks. We do get a lot of feedbacks from teachers and librarians as well, saying that it's really helpful for SEND learners and EL pupils. And thirdly, well, it's cost effective and durable. Cost effective in that it's you buy the device, it's a one-off cost, and the books that goes with it, and then you can listen for as many times as you want for the rest of your life if you wish. There's no subscriptions or limited listens or users. The device in itself is quite versatile in use, as you see. Well, I don't know if you see it, but the device has a speaker that you can listen to, so you can use it on a one-to-one basis. It also has a headphone jack, but you can also connect it to a speaker. So if you buy one of our school packs, you get an aux cable, so you can listen to it in the classroom or in the library corner. And you can also use it with headphone splitter, so you can have 5 pupils per player. It's made for children, so it's fairly robust. The books are made out of recycled used cards glued together, so you can. We had to do this for certification, but you could give it a good bash, and you really have to insist for it to break. So it's very robust, and that's also good feedback that we get. Yeah, that was about it on the very short time I had. But if you are interested to find out more, please contact us. Have a look at our website, voxblock.co.uk, or contact us at schools@voxblock.co.uk, and I'd be delighted to speak more about us and what we do.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Rebecca. I love the background. I love that you as a parent went through and actually invented something to do what you wanted it to do for your child. So and congratulations on the success you have, and also thank you for supporting this webinar with a giveaway, which we're really excited about. So I think we do have some time for some questions. First question, actually interesting, from Rachel, possibly initially for Irene. And do you think, and obviously anybody can weigh in if you would like to, do you think there is a big difference between an adult reading the story and the children listening to an audio, say on Yoto or I guess any other device? So do you think there's a big difference?
Personally, I mean, I can jump straight in with my idle thoughts.
Yeah,
I can't really say much from the research, so I apologise. I'm going to caveat with that. But my idle thoughts would be, there will be physiological differences if you are hearing a story from an adult, especially, a close family member, potentially, a teacher, another role model, family member, and so on. There'll be, I know from people I've spoken to recently, actually, who work in kind of brain scanning research, what some of the benefits are. For example, if you're sharing stories and poems with young children and the difference it makes to their brainwaves. So idle thoughts wise, I would say probably being in close proximity to another human being will have some differences. I wouldn't say necessarily people are always quick to be binary, but is it better or worse? Is it better or worse? It's different. Hearing something recorded by a professional actor or actress could be different again. You could hear things you might otherwise, you might not know how something's pronounced well, as I think Lucy said already. But yes, hearing how somebody who's trained, if you like, and is a very confident speaker reads a story out, that could be particularly beneficial. So horses for courses, I think it's to each. Sorry if that was a bit vague.
No, I think it's really interesting when you talk about physiological research, and I guess as well it depends who is the adult reading to the young person.
Can I chip in as well with a bit of
sure. I was just going to say, I think Claire did mention this, is the solution it offers when you, as say the librarian, are sort of wanting to galvanise the school community and get everyone involved in reading, especially teachers. And then if you have teachers who aren't comfortable or confident, especially with reading, it's that opportunity, isn't it? But yeah, sure, Lucy, sorry, far away.
Yeah, no, I completely agree around that. I think from the being able to read aloud well is a really key skill for people working with children and young people, but it's not something that everyone's really good at. And so I think it is, as Irene was saying, it's not an either or, it's just a part of what we can throw into the mix as a way to access stories. But I would also say that there is an element, and I can't remember which research this is from, so this is uncited, but there's it definitely fits in anecdotally with what when I work with teachers, that there is an aspect in which we stick to books that we are confident reading aloud, and that can limit the diversity of the books that children have access to. And particularly there was comments around accents and so on. And so quite often teachers can stick to books that have been written in their own accent, and then that limits the diversity of text that children are able to access being read aloud, and they're not necessarily hearing things written in their own accent, for example, or the accents of their family. So that it can be a really important way to increase diversity of what children can listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. Claire, I don't know if you're in, just because I think you did mention that about the sort of teachers. What has have you experienced that with adults reading and the teachers at school?
Yeah, we did tutor time reads, and we sort of gave out physical books, and my inbox was suddenly full of people saying, "Have you got the audio of this? Can you find an audio of it?" Because I don't want to read aloud. So yeah, like we're saying, maybe they just don't want to read, maybe they're just not that great at it. As librarians, we think everybody's going to be great at reading stories, but they're not. So in that respect, it's been really good. But I was just going to say, in our library lessons, I read aloud to start the session, because I think getting that balance is really, really important. And, I'll pause and we'll talk about what we've read so far, what they've heard. I'll get the kids, if they're confident, to read aloud a little bit as well. So it is finding, not always reaching for the audio book. That's more for the students. As in the library, we very rarely actually play for the group.
Right, okay, thank you. There is another question, and I know Irene, you did sort of respond to this, but it's quite interesting to think about this. I just wonder what your thoughts are on, somebody has mentioned the value of audiobooks with dyslexic students has been mentioned, but is there any data research on how many they benefit students with other forms of neurodiversity? And again, I don't know whether any of you have any experience of that. And Claire, you have talked about that a little bit in terms of mindfulness, but thinking about, ADHD or autism, I don't know if any of you've got sort of any experiences that you've had with students or young people that you've worked with or come across. Rebecca?
Not at all research based, but just we do have a lot of feedback from our customers that have autistic children or with ADHD, and they can't praise it enough. Audiobooks in itself, and I think with our format that they get their own book they can hold, they can look at, it's a physical thing that they can use. And I can't remember, somebody was saying previously that when kids start listening to audiobooks, there's a calm, or it's not that the sensor disappear, but there's just a calm. And we hear that a lot of feedback with, especially children with ADHD, they just zoom out and, just go into this audiobook world.
Brilliant. Okay, audiobook world is probably quite a good note to end on, because we are now at 5:29 according to my laptop, and I don't want to finish late. But there are some practical questions about Overdrive and Sora. So Paul, I think if you're happy for us to share your slides, that would be great. And then members and anybody watching can get in touch with you direct, if that's okay, with those kind of cost related queries. I think probably it's just over to me now, just to say a huge thank you to everybody for joining us today, for sharing your insight and your thoughts and your enthusiasm for audio. And I think it is very exciting, the solution that it offers in, addressing the concerns we all have about young people and children engaging with reading, but also just new routes into reading and part of a whole school approach, using all the different formats that are available to us to get kids on board and actually to build that reading community in schools. So thank you to everybody for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.